Hey folks, I'll show you the cockpit of the Peugeot 208 today, just so you can see it. Today's lesson began with an odd preamble on tractors as we were leaving the village to head south. Tony pointed out that there was a tractor ahead of us. I couldn't see it at first. I was looking at lorries passing us a lot closer, but he was like pointing almost to the end of the road, a ways off, and he said slow down for that tractor, and I was like, what tractor? It was like all the way up the road there, and he got me slowing down early for it before we arrived, and then we kept quite a long distance behind it. I think it's because we're on national speed limit, and so at some point Tony went through the deal with tractors. What's the deal with tractors? Tractors can reach 120 miles per hour, so they're quite strong and powerful. They can actually go faster than they look like they can go. So when you see them going slow, it's kind of strange because a lot of them can go a lot faster than that. They have grooves on their wheels that that get rid of mud very easily because they're big gappy grooves, I suppose, but they don't move like rain off the road very easily, which sounds very odd to me. Apparently cars can, but tractors can't very easily. So there are times when tractors are allowed on dual carriageways, strangely, despite the speed you normally see them at, but they're not allowed on motorways. So a tractor can go on a dual carriageway, but it's limited to a speed of, God, I can't remember what it is now, 35 miles an hour or something? Something like that. The one we're following was doing 35 miles an hour. I think Tony said they can do maximum, they're allowed to do maximum of 35 miles per hour on the dual carriageway. Maybe it is 35. It's incredibly slow anyway, the figure he gave me. So I assume they'd be on the left lane if they're doing that, and that it could be like travel between farms and there's no other way to get between your two farms or something. He's saying the reason for the speed cap, whatever it is, on tractors is because they have no suspension, or some of them have a suspension that you can turn on and off. Because apparently when you're on fields bumping around on the mud and stuff, you don't want suspension because it just bounces you around all the place. And I was telling him I thought suspension was actually to make the ride of your vehicle easier, like if you went over speed bumps and you had suspension you'd feel it less. But he's saying if you're driving over bumpy muddy fields it's too much suspension and it'll bounce you around all over the place. So they don't generally have suspension. Some of them do, some don't. Most don't, he says, and therefore, because there's no real suspension, they're not allowed to drive fast on dual carriageways. I'm not 100% sure on exactly why that is. I guess it's maybe because of accidents or something. The suspension helps. Not sure. Anyway, so we had that preamble as we were leaving the village, as we got stuck behind a tractor. We very slowly came up to the tractor. It took a while for us to get to it, and then when we got to it, he left what looked like he wanted to leave like 4 cars lengths between us and it. So, okay, fair enough. Back in the village, I looked at different parking spots I can do, but you can't always park in different places because outside a lot of people's homes is where they park, even though it's just like a bland looking road with no yellow lines or no double yellows. You can't quite tell which cars are attached to which houses and which ones park where. So you have to kind of be really careful also with the road width to try and identify places that are parkable. But it's easier in like country villages than it is in like a town. I think if you tried to park randomly in Plymouth City, you'd have to pay parking £2.50 and up for like most places you could think of to park at. I don't think there's free parking that I know of in the cities. Correct me if I'm wrong, because that'd probably help actually in the comments if you tell me, do cities have areas of free parking? I highly doubt it. So we went up as usual to the Hellmouth town, and our focus today was on slightly bigger roundabouts and continuing doing the mini roundabouts. and we did a lot more with gears because gears were very difficult. So there's a lot of roundabouts. I think I might have went through last episode. There's a lot of roundabouts in Tabby. We did one that was the big main roundabout, I think. Or was it two? We did go to the Drake one once, but we mainly did the one that was across from the post office and the River Tavy bridge. You know, that road that leads off to the town hall. There's a big-ish, it's not really that big roundabout, it's 3 exits, but it's bigger than the ones we've been doing. We drove past it, one quick pass to get to Down Road, went up Down Road, did that little estate loop we did before the temporary roadworks had gone, went back down Road, and back to that same roundabout. I did a few loops through the town centre, so looking for hazards, to a mini roundabout, and then back again to that bigger one, so we could approach it like 3 times, I want to say. I'm going to skip ahead to near the end time. I was approaching it before we went home, and I got caught out there. Apparently I was trying to stop and go into first at the line, which seemed non-dangerous to me, but he said, like, no, you got to keep going here, onto the roundabout, and I was worried about a car in front to the right that was not indicating in the correct direction, and I thought it was going to come in front of us, so I purposefully didn't go across the line into the roundabout. But he said we were stopping in a place where there should have been traffic flow, and so we had to keep going onto the roundabout, and he could see that the car, because of its positioning, which I wasn't looking at, positioning on the outside lane means he was going to come past us even though it was indicating wrong. So I thought he was going to come in front of us, but his positioning, so I need to pay attention. If a car is orbiting on the outside lane of a roundabout, it's probably going to go past you. Whereas if it's orbiting on the inside lane of the roundabout, nearer the island, it's probably going to come in front of you. So I got caught out there. He wanted me to keep going, keep the flow of traffic going, and I was just thrown by this car with its indicator in the wrong place. So I thought if we kept going we'd crash, but he said keep going, so we didn't crash, obviously. And he replayed that on his little iPad thing he's got, because he's recording through video all the things in my journey that have happened for playback. Mr. Technology. Also, I found out in this lesson that my driving instructor is kind of anti-SJW. Like, he hates woke stuff. He hates, like, the perpetually offended, oversensitive people. He calls other drivers, when he sees a driver in a car, he calls them it. Like, automatically. That's how I found out. I was like, what? You called him it? There's a woman in there. He's like, yeah, but it might be a man, might be a woman. Who knows these days? The world's gone crazy. I just call them all it. And I was like, okay, you might offend some of your other students if you do that. And he's like, oh, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time for students who are offended by everything. The world's gone mad. And he went on a little bit of a rant there, which I thought was funny. So that's cool to find out. I was just expecting him not to share any politics with me, so I just didn't get into politics, but apparently he's at least like an anti-communist type guy. Probably because he's an older guy. So, where did we get to there? That was that roundabout that I struggled with. I skipped to the end because that was the same roundabout, but we did some stuff in between that, obviously. That was just coming to the same roundabout before we went home. Before that, we went into town. We did the loop through the high street, but then the third try, we didn't go through the high street. We went straight ahead, which takes us up to all this stuff around the back of the viaduct. Drake Road, Abbey Place. And then he took me turning in from Abbey Place to Bannerwell Street, which is the one that eventually goes under the viaduct. And it completely slipped my mind that there was like a one-way system here. And he was trying to catch me out. He was trying to test me. I failed the test. I don't want to get the habit of saying I failed the test. I failed his little trick. He turned me into Bannerwell Street at the top, and then he's like, can we keep going? And I saw a van coming up. I was like, well, maybe we need to tuck into the side to let the van through, then we can go around the van. I tucked in, let the van through, and then I started to keep going. And he went, stop. And he grabbed the wheel and went, I'm just going to reverse time for you there. He grabbed the wheel and reversed the car back to where we were. And he goes, what's wrong with this situation? And I had to look out the windows and go, because what I was doing before then was I was in first gear and I went out of first to neutral because I forgot what gear I was in, and I put it in first gear again to check I was in first gear, and I thought he was calling me up on that, but actually we were facing a double no entry on either side and a one-way sign to the right, which was for an entrance that was on our left called Lakeside. And I didn't realise that I completely wasn't observing the signs properly, and it seemed blatantly obvious once we stopped that was a double no entry, so it was a one-way zone not in our favour, so we couldn't go down it. And so the only other exit was to turn left down this tiny narrow road, which is actually a two-way road, but it's only got room enough for one car. I had to stop there and I didn't realise, but he said, if it makes it any easier on you, every student I've taken down this road has made the same mistake. Or nearly every student. So what I would have had to do was stop there, notice the signs because I wasn't paying attention to road signs enough, realise that this wasn't... I think on your test, the driving instructor's meant to go, follow the road ahead or follow my instructions unless road signs tell you otherwise. And so they try and catch you out with that on the test, where they take you somewhere where you've got to decide not to go down a one-way road and that you have to turn down the little side entrance away from this place rather than go straight through it. So hopefully I'll spot the next no entry sign. Up on top, we went up to Glanville Road, this is on top near the viaduct now, and we did a thing called Rocky Hill, which I told him in advance that I didn't like the look of. I didn't tell him that it was because I'd done lessons there in 2010, I think it was 2010 actually, with Andy Easton, and I failed that road pretty bad with Andy Easton because he took me down that road. It's really steep downhill, really tight, and it's a proper, you know those zigzag signs you get where it's a lightning zigzag? It's more actually like that in real life. Like there's a right jink, a left jink, and they're really harsh turns on a tiny road, and you're downhill steep the entire time to get down to where the dentist is. Then you've got not a give way sign, but a stop sign, and it's really hard to see the stop sign, and you may stop right at the line, and something happened. I think I almost stalled there or something. Yeah, I think I might have stalled there for a sec. And there's parked cars either side as well, and you have no view left and right, and there was a big van behind us, and we had to kind of creep slowly into the road looking left and right after the stall, and try and come out to the right, I think we were going. So I failed that. That was called Rocky Hill, I think. Yeah. And then we went down, turned right, and we went down to the Drake roundabout, which is another big one, but that was quite easy to do. Went around the side there to Pixon Lane, the roundabout Pixon Lane, and then we went through Pixon Lane and up to the top of Pixon Lane, which is a nightmarish uphill junction, where you're meant to pause on the junction. My problem there was I was meant to keep away from a stone that's at the bottom of the wall that for some reason nobody's got rid of. Maybe it's got some ancient heritage behind it or something, so people just have this stone sticking out at the bottom of the road next to a huge wall on your left. And he was saying, right, veer away from that stone to the right. And I was like, ugh, there's not much room to veer off to the right. And then he's like, no, immediately veer to the left. You need to be on the left on this junction. So I was veering back toward the stone. I was like, am I going right or left in this split second? And then it's like, pause on the bike point. And then I either stalled there. I know I steered wrong because he said steer away from the stone and then steer left toward the edge of the junction. So I was too far right. So I had to try and get out and peek. I think I might have stalled there as well though. And I had to do hill start with the parking brake, and I hate the parking brake thing. I just want a handbrake, you know, it's so much more sense to me. So those are two steep hills that I want to conquer, because they're quite difficult to get right. And then after that, yeah, I think that's when we came round to the roundabout and headed off back home. So, yeah, I hope I've covered everything. There was a few details, like doing the cockpit drill. I was facing a different way when I started off out of home, so I couldn't see the sky when I was doing the wing mirrors. Like, you're meant to leave a bit of sky up in the wing mirrors. And I'd forgotten why that was. I hadn't remembered the reason for that. I was just told by someone that you should. But since I couldn't see any sky because we had the garage behind us, I couldn't do that. So I just had a bit of the car and a bit of the road in both of them. And then we set off. And then later, when we parked in the little estate off down road, I realised I couldn't see very far out of my wing mirrors. And then I moved them up so I got a little bit of sky in the left and right wing mirrors. And then suddenly I could see way up the road. So it's not actually the sky you're looking at, it's just that the sky, having a bit of sky in your wing mirror is a good marker. When you do that, you are able to see far up the road. And if you don't do that, you're seeing a lot less. You're only seeing stuff that's near to you by several hundred yards. So that's the reason. I'm going to try and remember that. And I definitely have to try and remember the whole thing with the cars orbiting on the outside lane of the roundabout. That's like a second indicator that I can watch for. And Tony really doesn't want me to stop at roundabouts, which might be awkward in future, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I'll leave it there. We've got another lesson coming up on Thursday, so I'll do a debrief then. I don't know if I've got anything else to say. I'm starting to remember where the front and rear demister is and how to turn them off, and I'm kind of at war with Tony's car because I don't like the start-stop system for starting the car. Yeah, other things like that wheel on the steering wheel that turns off your entire rev counter and speedo at random if you nudge it. The indicator having like a nudge thing that keeps it going for too long, things like that. Anyway, I'll catch you all next time.